Have you ever wondered what might be hidden within the 95% of the Amazon rainforest that humans have never set foot in? What if some of the species we believe went extinct are actually still out there, quietly surviving in the deep shadows of the jungle? Today, we're going to take a closer look at 7 prehistoric creatures that may have never truly disappeared from our world. Among the creatures most often mentioned, when people talk about species that may not be entirely gone, the saber-toothed cat, better known as Smilodon, is perhaps the most intriguing. This was no ordinary feline, weighing up to nearly 900 pounds, with fangs that could reach close to 12 inches in length. It was once one of the most formidable predators on Earth. Interestingly, its bite force wasn't as strong as you might expect. Instead, it relied on exceptionally powerful neck muscles, allowing it to drive those long, curved blade-like teeth deep into its prey. According to scientists, Smilodon disappeared around 10,000 years ago, likely due to climate shifts and a gradual loss of food sources. However, accounts emerging from the Amazon rainforest have led some to reconsider that conclusion. Certain indigenous tribes in Peru have described a massive wild cat with unusually long, curved teeth, often seen near riverbank caves. What's striking is that these descriptions don't seem to match any known animal living today. In 2001, a researcher documented multiple similar reports from deep within remote forest regions, places where human presence is rare. Witnesses didn't describe a familiar predator, but something larger, quieter, and remarkably adept at avoiding humans. When you consider that vast portions of the Amazon ecosystem remain unexplored, the question begins to feel less far-fetched. Did Smilodon truly go extinct, or has it simply slipped beyond the reach of our sight? If Smilodon makes us question what may still be lurking on land, then Titanoboa opens the door to an entirely different kind of fear, one that lives beneath the dark, silent waters of the Amazon's swamps. In 2009, coal miners in Colombia made an accidental discovery: enormous fossilized bones unlike anything they had seen before. The analysis later confirmed they belonged to Titanoboa, a snake stretching over 40 feet long and weighing more than a small car. It is considered the largest snake ever to exist on Earth. Around 60 million years ago, it ruled tropical wetlands, powerful enough to crush ancient crocodiles with a single coiling strike. Scientists believe Titanoboa disappeared when the global climate cooled. As a cold-blooded reptile, it depended entirely on environmental heat to survive. When temperatures dropped, so did its chances of continuing on. For many, that's where the story ends. But today, temperatures in parts of the Amazon are significantly warmer than they were centuries ago. Some researchers have suggested that certain regions now share similarities with the hot, humid conditions Titanoboa once thrived in. Of course, that isn't proof that it still exists, but it doesn't completely rule it out either. What makes the story even more thought-provoking are the long-standing legends along the Rio Negro. Indigenous communities speak of a mother of the waters, a serpent so massive that its movement could alter the flow of the river itself. Some explorers have even reported long, straight paths of fallen trees deep within flooded forests, patterns that don't quite match storms or natural erosion. In an ecosystem as vast and largely unexplored as the Amazon, where deep swamps remain nearly impossible to access, the idea of a massive, hidden creature no longer feels entirely unreasonable. Titanoboa may have vanished from the fossil record, but has it truly vanished from the Amazon? If the waters of the Amazon could conceal something like Titanoboa, then the dense jungle above may once have been home to another predator, one so unsettling it earned the name terror bird. Millions of years ago, these birds dominated South America. Standing close to 10 feet tall and weighing over 220 pounds, they couldn't fly, but that didn't make them any less dangerous. With long, powerful legs, they could outrun a human with ease, and their massive, hooked beaks were strong enough to crush bone with a single, well-placed strike. This wasn't a harmless backyard bird. This was an apex predator, according to the fossil record. Terror birds disappeared around 2 million years ago, likely due to environmental changes and the rise of competing predators. For a long time, that seemed to be the end of their story. But in 2016, a park ranger in Brazil reported something unusual along a riverbank large. Deep footprints pressed into the mud, each nearly a foot long. Tallying no known modern bird in the region leaves tracks like that. In addition, some indigenous hunters have spoken of a large, flightless bird hidden deep within the forest. They describe it as taller than a person, fast-moving, and capable of sudden, aggressive attacks. These accounts may not appear in scientific journals, but they've persisted across generations. In a forest where sunlight barely reaches the ground, where sound can vanish after just a few steps, the idea of a tall, two-legged creature moving silently through the trees doesn't feel entirely impossible. If the Amazon can still hold secrets beneath its waters, why couldn't it be hiding an ancient predator on land as well? If towering, two-legged predators once moved silently across the forest floor, then beneath the murky rivers of ancient Amazonia lives something even more formidable, Purosaurus, a colossal crocodilian that once ruled the entire freshwater ecosystem of South America around 8 million years ago. Purosaurus inhabited vast wetlands stretching across the Amazon basin. Its skull alone measured nearly 5 feet long, almost the size of a modern crocodile's entire body. In total, it could reach lengths of up to 40 feet and weigh more than 8 tons. Fossil studies suggest its bite force ranked among the strongest ever recorded after the age of dinosaurs. This wasn't a predator that fed on fish alone. Its diet likely included giant turtles, large mammals, and even other crocodilians. Scientists believe Purosaurus disappeared as the landscape transformed. The rise of the Andes Mountains altered river systems, and the expansive wetlands it depended on gradually dried out. A creature of that size required vast territory and abundant prey. When its environment changed, survival became impossible. Yet even today, parts of the Amazon still contain ancient flooded regions, places so remote that human presence is rare. The communities living along the D say there is something they call the grandfather crocodile, an unusually large creature said to dominate deep hidden waters that outsiders have never explored. We know that modern black caimans can grow up to 20 feet long. But could something much larger still be lurking in those dark rivers? In an ecosystem spanning over 2 million square miles, with countless waterways still unexplored, the existence of a massive hidden predator isn't entirely beyond reason. Purosaurus may have vanished from the geological record, but in the quiet currents of the Amazon, perhaps its story isn't truly over. If the rivers of the Amazon once belonged to massive crocodilians like Purosaurus, then the drier lands nearby were home to something that seems almost imagined Macrauchenia. Its name means long-necked llama, but the reality is far more unusual. Picture a body similar to a camel without a hump, sturdy legs like a rhinoceros, a long neck like a giraffe, and most striking of all, a short trunk-like nose positioned between its eyes. It weighed nearly as much as a small car and could move with surprising speed and agility, helping it evade predators like saber-toothed cats and terror birds. For millions of years, it survived and adapted within a harsh and dangerous ecosystem. Based on fossil evidence, Macrauchenia is believed to have gone extinct around 10,000 years ago, roughly when humans first arrived in South America. However, in Colombia and Brazil, archaeologists have discovered rock carvings dated to over 12,000 years ago. These images clearly depict an animal with 3 toes, a long neck, and a trunk-like feature details that closely resemble Macrauchenia. What gives researchers pause is that a closely related species has been confirmed to have survived until about 4,000 years ago, thousands of years later than previously thought. This suggests that the lineage may have persisted far longer than we once assumed. The Amazon spans over 2 million square miles, much of it still unexplored. If a branch of this species managed to endure for several thousand extra years deep within dense forests, then the possibility of a final survivor lingering in remote regions isn't entirely unreasonable. History has shown us time and again nature doesn't always follow the neat conclusions we try to impose on it. If Macrauchenia suggests that history may stretch further than textbooks once claimed, then Glyptodon raises a different question. How could a creature so perfectly protected disappear entirely? Glyptodon was an ancient mammal, a distant relative of the modern armadillo, but far larger than anything alive today, about the size of a small car. Its body was covered in a thick, dome-like shell of bony armor, forming a natural shield against predators. Even its tail was built for defense, reinforced and powerful enough to be used as a weapon. For millions of years, that armor helped it withstand some of South America's most formidable hunters. Fossil evidence shows that Glyptodon once roamed widely across the continent and is believed to have gone extinct around 10,000 years ago, during the same period when many other large animals disappeared. Yet what gives some researchers pause is its habitat-dense forests, rivers, and heavy vegetation environments that, in many ways, still exist in the Amazon today. Even more intriguing are the oral traditions passed down through indigenous communities deep within the forest. They speak of a large creature with a back as hard as stone, with skin so thick that ordinary weapons cannot penetrate it. What stands out is that these stories appear across communities separated by hundreds, even thousands of miles, yet the descriptions remain strikingly consistent in the 1,930 seconds. And even decades later, there were scattered reports of sightings, accounts of a large animal with a shell resembling that of a giant turtle, moving through the deep jungle. There is no confirmed evidence, but there is no clear explanation either. When a creature is so well designed for defense, living in one of the most vast and inaccessible forests on Earth, the idea that it could remain hidden from human view for an extended time doesn't seem entirely unreasonable, and once again, the Amazon has yet to offer a final answer. If Glyptodon represents the near impenetrable armor of the prehistoric world, then Megatherium embodies something else entirely raw size and strength. This was not the small, tree-hanging sloth we recognize today. Megatherium was a true giant of the Ice Age. When standing on its hind legs, it could reach nearly 20 feet in height and weigh around 4 tons, comparable to a full-grown African elephant. Its long, curved claws were powerful enough to pull down trees or defend itself against large predators. For millions of years, it existed with virtually no natural enemies. Then, around 12,000 years ago, Megatherium disappeared from the fossil record, roughly coinciding with the spread of humans across South America. Yet deep within the Amazon, many indigenous communities still speak of a creature known as the Mapinguari, a massive beast with dark reddish fur, walking upright, emitting a strong, unpleasant odor, and bearing inward curving claws. What's striking is how closely these details align with what science knows about giant ground sloths. Some preserved specimens have shown reddish tones in their skin, and their claw structure could leave footprints that appear almost backward, a rare but documented trait. In the 1,990 seconds, a zoologist collected over 100 independent accounts along rivers in Brazil. While he couldn't prove the creature's existence, he also couldn't easily dismiss the consistency in the descriptions. The Amazon still holds rivers that haven't been fully mapped, and regions that have never been thoroughly explored. And history has shown us that not every species disappears exactly when we think it does. Perhaps Megatherium truly went extinct, or perhaps, somewhere beneath the dense canopy, an ancient presence still moves quietly beyond the reach of our sight. When we look back at all these stories, from saber-toothed cats and giant serpents to towering predatory birds, armored beasts, and massive ground sloths, it's easy to dismiss them as a blend of legend and imagination. And it's true, modern science has yet to provide confirmed evidence that any of these creatures still exist. But there's something important to keep in mind. The Amazon is not a small forest that can be fully explored in a few decades. It is a vast ecosystem spanning millions of square miles, with regions no human has ever set foot in. Even in the 21st century, biologists continue to discover entirely new species: mammals, reptiles, insects, and plants. If smaller creatures can remain hidden for so long, then the idea that a very small population of a larger species might survive in a remote corner isn't entirely impossible. Scientific history has repeatedly revised what once seemed certain. There have been cases where species believed to be extinct for decades were unexpectedly rediscovered in some distant part of the world. That doesn't mean every legend is true, but it does remind us that nature is far more complex and mysterious than our maps suggest. Perhaps all of these prehistoric creatures are truly gone. Or perhaps, somewhere within the mist-covered rivers and dense canopies of the Amazon, a few final traces of an ancient world still endure, and until every part of that forest is explored, the answer may remain just out of reach. And perhaps what makes this story most thought-provoking isn't the answer, but the questions that remain. What do you think? Out of all the creatures we've explored, which one do you believe could still exist today? Share your thoughts below, because sometimes the truth begins with the questions we're willing to ask.